And welcome to Carry Out Conversations, the podcast where we sit down, eat, and we talk. I'm John.
I'm Dave.
And I'm Noah.
And it's so good to have all you guys listening in to us. It makes it very nice to know that some people are listening. We've kind of talked about this a little bit as we've been doing this and, thinking about like all the different ways we could get more listeners and things like that. But, at the end of it, I just like doing this because it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much fun to be able to sit down and, talk, even though I have to deal with these guys every single day, basically. It's fun to sit down and we talk about things that, normally don't talk about at work, or just be able to sit down and have a good time. And it's just, like I said, it's a lot of fun. And just really, I like it. Even if nobody else really listens to us, It's always fun just doing this.
We have 3 listeners.
They're cool.
Shout out to the 3 people who listen.
Yes.
Todd, Jamie, and Goku.
Goku.
Yes.
Yeah, Goku listens. So got some celebrity status in this.
There we go.
Yeah.
No, but it is great to have you guys. Like I said, however many, it's great having you guys. I will say tonight we are going to get into a little bit of a deep conversation with a couple of things. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this out. This is going to be kind of awkward for me because I've never thought we would do this, but we are going to slap a content warning on this thing. Mm-hmm. We are going to try to keep it as family friendly as possible, but we are going to get in some things that normally, people don't like to discuss, or things like that. And so I will say that if you are uncomfortable talking about language, violence, sex, those types of things, you might want to turn away from this one. Again, we are going to keep it as clean as possible, but it is not going to be the family friendly-ist of the shows that we're going to be doing. So leading into that, Hollywood. What do we think?
I liked the Minions movie. I think that it was really good. I think that we have peaked as a society, and we should stop there.
Yes.
That is the peak.
Stop at Minions.
Yeah,
Just be like,
we did it, humanity.
Yeah.
We did it.
Minions 2 kind of crossed the line a little bit.
Wait, there's a sequel?
Oh, yeah? You didn't know that?
Okay, well, that's what I'm doing tonight after this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a Minion sequel.
I thought we were going to have a Star Wars marathon.
I sure hope not. That's so long.
All 9 episodes, and then the Harry Potter series right after.
Well, see, okay, so you can't forget, though, you got Rogue One, and you have the Solo movie.
Solo doesn't exist.
No.
I'll watch Rogue One any day. But
Rogue One was good.
So the Solo isn't good, but it is fun. If you turn your brain off and watch it, it's fun.
Well, I mean, you can say the same thing for the entire sequel trilogy.
No, because the sequel trilogy is pain. It's just painful.
It's
okay.
It's not painful.
No, the proper way to watch Star Wars is you watch episode 3, and then 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 you watch Lord of the Rings, because episode 3 and then Lord of the Rings is better than anything else.
Lord of the Rings is much better than any other movie series I've ever seen.
100%. Well, I don't even view it as a series, because it's one 12-hour movie.
Pretty much.
That's how I view it.
Pretty much.
But if I could only have one film, Fellowship.
2 Towers.
Fellowship. 2 Towers overrated. Fellowship.
2 Towers for me, it just was an amazing. It was an amazing movie all the way around.
Gondor calls for aid.
The CGI of it, the whole part where Gandalf and the riders come over the top of that hill right at the sunrise. And I know that I probably just ruined it for any person who's lived under a rock and has not seen that movie.
Me.
But
what? You haven't seen Lord of the
Please tell
Rings?
me
I have not seen Lord of the Rings. I haven't even seen the first one.
oh,
You're
okay.
not. You can't be a movie fan. That has to change.
Yeah, that does have to change. You've got to sit down and watch those.
So actually, I think the peak of Hollywood is something like Lord of the Rings, if not Lord of the Rings itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like that series is a phenomenal feat.
It's a classic.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
And no matter how much they try to shoot off of it, because now, you've got The Hobbit, and you've got, I don't know how many, was there 3 of those that I think, honestly, they should have just made it 1 and been done with it.
Right.
But now they've got a TV series that's coming out. that kind of backtracks a little bit more about the ring.
The one thing I will say I like about the idea of the TV show, whether it's good or not, which remains to be seen, I don't think it will be that good, personally. But the one thing I am interested in seeing is it is based on parts of the newer books that have been compiled from Tolkien's notes. So they're not just like writing their own story and being like, oh, it's kind of Middle-earth, but they're actually basing it off his notes and his writings that were only recently published. So it's kind of interesting to see, because if you read the Silmarillion, we know what happens in the first and the third age, but now we get to see the second, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it really fills in the gaps. And and that leads me definitely into the topic that we want to talk about, the fact of how movies in Hollywood has had a big part of our culture, not just the American culture, but just like as a culture in a whole. Like, it's had a huge part of it. Every time you turn the TV on, the radio on, you walk through a store, you're seeing things about the new movies that are coming out, the new TV shows. This actor, actress, doing this, and it's like, you can't get away from Hollywood.
Right.
And that's a good thing sometimes, I think, because I am a movie fanatic. I have showed you guys my list of movies.
Very extensive.
It has grown.
Good.
I think I am up to 1,356 movies on my list to watch. That's not including TV shows. And some of them are the classics that, have been around for ages, things that you'll never be able to duplicate. And I pray to God that they never try to. Gone with the Wind. I don't think they'll ever be able to remake that. To me, that was one of the better movies.
Sound of Music.
See, I've never seen The Sound of Music. That's the sad part. It's on my list. But even like we were talking about, Lord of the Rings, it's a classic.
That Dave has not seen.
That we need to change.
Yeah.
I have seen Sound of Music.
Oh, well, man, am I the only one? Man, you guys do not know good movies. I'm kidding.
Okay, this comes from the person that every time me and Dave make a movie quote, young one over here, I don't get it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's quote a movie from 1978 that nobody heard of called like Sergeant Buttface or whatever. It's like, guys, nobody knows those movies. They were not relevant. They are not relevant.
Everybody
they are not
knows the movies.
No.
Everybody knows the movies.
It's like, oh, guys, let's quote Clerk 2 all day.
I haven't seen Clerks 2.
No, I haven't either.
Why have you guys not seen Clerks? Okay, whatever.
See, this is what we're talking about. It's like, the good classic movies. You're like, oh, I don't know
Clerks
them.
8. And Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Okay, Paul Blart was awesome. Don't take it back.
No, I love that movie. I watched it 3 times this year.
Okay, I was about to say, you were about to say something wrong, and I was gonna.
I think I've seen it once in my lifetime, but it was in the theater.
Okay, one of the funniest things about that movie is the pen guy. So there's a guy in the mall who sells pens, and that's all he does. Like, he sells super expensive pens.
Yes.
And he flexes like he's a car salesman, and he's like, "Oh, I got this new ballpoint gel, like
$150."
It's like, no, it's like $7.55.
Yeah. It's such a good movie. I know people, they tend to look over that one. Napoleon Dynamite's another great one for me. It's like, Napoleon Dynamite will always be a favorite in my eyes.
Are you drinking whole milk because you think you're fat? You could drink 2% if you wanted to.
That is definitely a movie.
Yes, it's a movie.
You don't like Napoleon Dynamite?
I don't hate it.
Dave,
I don't
you're
love it.
You're just jealous. I've been chatting with hot babes online all day.
And that's as far as you've ever gotten, Noah.
Look, me and LaFonda are serious.
Wow, that was a great shot.
Yeah, that was really good.
Oh man.
So okay, the funniest thing about Napoleon
I'm not
Dynamite
throwing away my shot.
is Kip. Let it die. No, the funniest thing is
kind of like his love life.
Kip.
To die, you'd have it, that would imply it was alive to begin with.
So Kip's wardrobe throughout that movie, from the time he meets LaFonda, becomes like more and more urban.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes from like this nerdy dorky kid to being like a 2000s gang member with like a do-rag and a huge chain and like a horse. It's just the weirdest
That's
aesthetic.
awesome.
Yeah. One reason why I like that movie so much, and we'll get back into the original thing.
Sure.
One reason I like that movie so much is the chicken farmer. He, when they're sitting there and they're talking about or they're eating lunch, and they're talking about the chickens, and one of the guys is like, he makes some mumble that I don't understand what he really said. That guy reminds me a lot of my grandpa, because he looks exactly like my grandpa. It was quite funny. But again, it makes me think of we're sitting here talking about all of these movies and these quotable moments and things like that. And I know we were talking about it some while we were eating tonight. But it makes me think of all the different ways that Hollywood has had an effect on us. Not just in bad ways. There's been some good ways, I think. No matter what we go through as far as our culture, Hollywood's had an effect. I'm all for movies. I'm all for movies. TV shows, that types of things. I'm all for movies that can bring families together and stuff like that. And it makes me think of and I kind of want to bring this out to you guys. What are some ways that Hollywood has helped as a culture, as people? What are some ways that Hollywood has helped us?
Okay. Have you guys have seen Boy Meets World, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That whole show. There's my answer.
That was an excellent show.
That show, because I grew up with those characters. I remember being 12 when Corey was 12, or maybe when he was a little older because the actor's older. But when they were playing it, that's how it felt. And then they grow up, and you kind of grow up with these characters, and it's you see them make mistakes in their early college years, and as someone who's there right now, it's been there, done that, messed up, hurt people, made mistakes, learned from them, and then the teacher of Mr. Feeney, phenomenal character, honestly reminds me of every good other than my father, every good father figure or teacher or instructor that I've had.
One of the best written characters in television history, I would argue. Actually, they originally wrote him to be comical, and then the actor William Daniels, who plays Mr. Feeney, said, "No, I don't like this. I'd rather play it, more like a mentor." And they rewrote it for him, and it worked out really well.
Yeah. So that kind of mentor role and wanting to be like him, wanting to be this wise old guy, and then the struggle of my immaturity getting in the way of that. But that scene at the end where he's I love you all, because he doesn't say it to them, but after they leave the classroom, he's I love you all, class dismissed. And as someone who wanted to go into education and still might go into education, it's man, Mr. Feeney is awesome. So yeah, just that whole show, and shows that have really good family values, Fresh Prince, stuff like that.
Fresh Prince was good.
I barely have memory. I remember it, but I was young. I was a child when it was on TV, so I don't have very clear memories of it.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of how I am with it. It's you always hear people talk about Fresh Prince, and you're oh yeah, I remember that show. But there's not that many, for me, there's not that many memorable parts of, I remember this episode. Saved by the Bell, total different story. I could tell you anything and everything about Saved by the Bell.
See, that's the thing. I never actually watched it. It was on during my childhood, just like the other shows we just talked about, but I never really watched it.
Saved by the Bell is a horror movie in a TV show. It is terrifying if you think about it. The principal literally wants to be Zach Morris's best friend. Zach Morris can freeze time. He's a perfect manipulator of friends and family. He's a horrible person, literally getting his friend addicted to pills just so he can profit off her talents. Yeah,
that was her fault. That was not his.
He can,
because he tried to stop it.
He can literally freeze time.
That's what you go off of?
Yeah.
Okay.
He can literally just say stop and it's freeze time, or freeze, or whatever the catchphrase was.
Yeah.
Also, why did no one help Screech? He had clear mental issues. He had clear physical problems. Nobody helped Screech.
Rest in peace, Screech.
Oh, did he die?
You didn't know that?
No.
Yeah, like
the
a couple
actor who
years
played
ago. Yeah, he
Screech
died.
Is gone.
Oh, dude, that's
Last year or the year before last, I
sucks.
think.
I can't remember, but yeah.
Yeah, sometimes like I think back and I'm like, oh wait, that actor did die.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's a way Hollywood affects us.
Yeah. And I mean, in some ways it is, because you get to see these people so much. And then it's like when you realize that they have passed on, it kind of affects you in a different way. Like I remember, okay, this is going to be weird, but I remember nearly crying when I found out Paul Walker died.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the Fast and Furious movies. I love, Hours, the movie Hours. If you have not seen it, go see it. Please get it and watch it. It is an amazing
Couple hours.
movie. It's a couple hours long. Yes. It essentially has to do with Hurricane Katrina. He is a father that is in Louisiana. His wife died giving childbirth, and he and his newborn baby are literally left in a hospital by themselves, and he is trying everything to keep her alive. And it is the most, as a father, it is one of the most gut-wrenching and heart-wrenching movies you'll ever watch.
Yeah.
It's just an absolute phenomenal movie, and it was so like underrated. I mean, it just got flown over by other movies during the time, but it is an amazing movie. But I remember like seeing that when he died, and just remember being like, oh man, it's like you're never going to get to experience that character flow anymore, that acting that he had. And he wasn't like the best actor out there, but he was one that I could look at and be like, I can relate to some of these things, or relate to how he, portrays a character. And it's like you start thinking about that. I think about it too, and you kind of brought it up with the whole Mr. Feeney and the parental guidance and things like that. One way that I think Hollywood has really helped us is in teaching. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have like the learning channels, we have Discovery, we have National Geographic, PBS Kids, that type of thing. I mean, stuff that I grew up with. I learned a lot from Barney.
I learned a lot from those, like, Dave, have you ever seen those weird survival shows? You know what I'm talking about? Like,
you're gonna have to be more specific.
There's a lot of weird
but like
shows.
Dual Survival, Survivor Man, Bear Grylls.
Mm-hmm.
Not really.
No? Okay. I feel okay. Steve Irwin?
No, I never had cable growing up.
Oh, okay. Well, so there was like all these Dual Survival and like all these other shows. I learned the weirdest stuff. You can literally, like, if you're in a wooded area, you can determine what is east, west. Like, you can determine your directions based on how anthills grow.
Mm-hmm. And moss on trees.
Take those with a grain of salt. Some of them are over dramatized to make good television.
Oh, I'm aware of that. That's why after I hear one of their facts, I'm like running to my computer. But still, it's like the whole Bear Grylls drinking his own urine thing. That's stupid. But still,
I mean, who hasn't done that?
Me. For the record, me. I'm not. That is not my thing
ever.
Yet.
Me neither.
Then again, I've ever been lost in the woods to where I had to resort to that.
Yeah, I don't think I would. I think I just find a ledge. Sensitive subject. My apologies. No, but like, so okay. The good side of Hollywood, like Dave, what's a way that Hollywood has impacted you? You think in a positive way? R.I.P. Hollywood. You just got wrecked. You have nothing of benefit.
I mean, what it boils down to is it's all, at least it's supposed to be, entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So, when I will say, like, you guys are aware the other week I suffered a bit of a loss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So one thing that I would consider a positive is I needed to let my emotions out a bit. Mm-hmm. So I deliberately put on a couple of movies that I knew would get me into that state.
Right.
And they were some good movies that they're both Disney films, but not a sponsor.
No, not a sponsor.
No.
But in a way, I do think some movies can be helpful in processing emotions.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. There are things that Hollywood does tend to do where it brings people together, or it brings like the good side of humanity out there. I know this is going to be, some people kind of like shun them away or whatever, but I am all for the Christian movies. Being a Christian, I'm all for them. Like Courageous, Facing the Giants. They're very low budget movies, but when you watch them and you actually catch the story behind it and the message that they're trying to get across, it can really help people if you really think about it.
So one of the things that the way I feel about Christian movies is there are a few that are higher budget that are phenomenal and not over the top and well acted. A good example would be Risen.
Yeah.
Which was almost a perfect movie. The one problem is the ending. What they should have done is it's like he can't find it, and then the last scene where he walks in and Jesus is there, and then they call it. But they have him like walk around with them in the desert for 30 minutes for no reason, and that totally killed the like detective aspect of it, which was kind of interesting.
Right.
But there is or the Luther movie, phenomenally acted, huge budget, great movie. But there is a movie called War Room. Have you seen it?
I have not seen it yet.
Okay. So it is it's a good message, but there is a scene where this old lady gets mugged, and this guy like pulls a knife on her, and she just points at him, and she's like, Jesus doesn't want you to rob me. And he's like, you're right. I'm so sorry. And he like drops his knife and like has a Bible study with her.
# not life advice.
And it's
don't actually try that with a mugger. It's probably not going to work.
And it's like, I understand, love your enemy. Yes, be willing to love those who you have disagreements with, and even those who persecute you. But if you're being mugged, it is probably not the best option.
Yes, but how bad do you think that it would throw somebody off if I pull a knife or a gun out on you and then you turn around and be like, Jesus said no? That's going to throw me off.
I'd be like, you're more crazy than me. Here's the knife.
Exactly. Here, take my money.
That's going to make me stab harder.
Jeez, Dave.
Wow.
You're a mugger. The goal of a mugger isn't to kill. It's to get the money.
Right.
I think.
Right, but you've convinced.
I've never been a mugger.
I've never been a mugger, so.
You've convinced me to stab.
Yeah?
Yeah. You want to tell me about Jesus? I'll introduce you to him. Here you go.
Whoa.
All right, well.
Dave, you're definitely getting mugged after this.
Anyway.
So much for a serious show.
Yeah.
It's a serious show.
Yeah. Anyway, but it's great to see things like that. Like I said, it helps us with unity. Like you said, it can even help get our minds off of things. Like, when we are going through a hard time, when you're going through a bout of depression or a bout of like, sadness, what's the first thing that a lot of people try to do? They throw on a comedy, to try to like get that spirit up a little bit. I mean, of course you don't want to put on a drama while you're dealing with depression, or you're having severe anxiety, so here, let me throw on Friday the 13th. No, you're going to throw on something that's going to counteract those feelings that you have. And it's, like Dave said, Disney. I have a lot of reservations about Disney, but
especially now.
Yeah, especially right now, the way things are going on with them. But Disney has come out with some decent movies that are my go-to when I'm having trouble or I'm having a bad moment in my life. Beauty and the Beast will always be just my go-to, and just like I love that movie.
I'm happy you like that movie.
I absolutely love that movie.
So I would say specifically Pixar films are excellent at helping you come to terms with your emotions, because a lot of them are comedies, but they have a lot of tragedy in them, and a lot of complicated things and feelings go on.
Yeah.
If my future wife ever dies before me, I'm gonna watch Up.
Oh. it's like that has got to be the saddest like 10 minutes of a movie.
I'm just
ever.
gonna rewatch the intro.
Oh man, that makes me want to cry now. Honestly,
Yeah, it sucks.
but
Don't marry people who are gonna die.
oh gosh, really?
Sorry.
Okay. Now let me ask you guys this: we're talking about ways that it's helped us and things like that.
Sure.
What are some ways that it has not helped? Hollywood has different counteractions with society. What are some ways that and we are going to get into like the political side of it and things like that a little bit, but what I want to talk about is like things that there's been so much of it that it hasn't helped at all. And that's kind of what I want to talk about just for a couple of minutes. Like, what are some ways that it has affected you poorly?
On a personal level, not a lot. But on a societal level, I think there's clear problems with like the direction Hollywood takes. The morals of Hollywood used to be like pretty simple. You watch a movie, it's like, don't steal, don't do this, don't do that. But since like the 70s and 80s, what happened? Well, we had there's the sexual revolution, and now everything is sexual. And I remember growing up, I'd go to see an action movie, and they'd always have like the hot chick, and they're showing off her body. It's like most of the people watching Transformers are like 11.
Yeah.
And like, so if culture isn't pornographic enough, now we're gonna slap the film industry onto that. I just don't think it's ideal. So I think that the sexual aspects of movies should be toned down a lot, especially for like PG-13 films that are targeted at young boys. Specifically, I think that's very damaging. So yeah.
So I'd like to bring up that in some ways they kind of lose sight as to what a movie is actually supposed to do. A movie is supposed to entertain you. I mean, yes, you're not supposed to feel good after you watch a horror film, or you're not supposed to get anxiety from fluffy bunnies or whatever happy kid-friendly thing that you went to see with your family, but it should be entertaining. It should be fun. And one thing I'd like to point out is the film industry used to be extremely conservative. The pendulum swung in the other way.
Right.
Think of movies like It's a Wonderful Life, but ultimately there's the one chick, but ultimately there's really nothing sexual or really that violent. There's a little bit of violence in that film, but ultimately it's a good story.
What, Transformers?
It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, It's a Wonderful Life. I'm sorry, I'm still on Transformers.
It's a Wonderful Life with Transformers. Ooh.
That
Hollywood, if you're listening.
Sam, get the cube.
By the light of the moon. It's a Wonderful Life quote.
I'm sorry, raise your hand if you've seen The Sound of Music.
Well, since nobody can see us raising our hands.
Yeah, but they know.
Probably, because we did talk about that.
We openly discussed who had seen it and who hadn't.
Exactly.
So,
but you talk about like the conservative side of it, and that's very true, and it makes me think of, it's like, okay, again, I'm a movie, I'm a movie buff. I like a lot of the movies. I like a lot of the things, kind of like the historical parts of it a little bit. You're talking about the conservative side, Dave. Noah, you're talking about like the how sex has kind of become rampant in a lot of the Hollywood movies. Yeah. Did you guys know, and this is a bit of useless information, the very first show to ever portray a man and woman in bed together were the Flintstones.
Really?
The Flintstones, a 1960s, 1970s, I don't know when it came out. I mean,
cartoon,
it was a cartoon, was the very first show to ever portray a man and woman in bed. Now, granted, they sat there in bed during the whole time. They turn off the little night light or whatever they had, and they fell asleep. Never anything past that point. But I get to thinking about it, and it's like, as soft as that is, like as minute as that is, going from that point to where we are now, to where there are TV shows where literally a third of it is nudity. And you can't watch it. It's like, if you are into that conservative mindset, if you're into that conservative, I know there are some people that just don't care. They turn themselves off, and that's kind of frightening in a way. But it's like, if you're in that conservative mindset, you can't watch shows like Game of Thrones, because that's all it is nudity and violence and sex and that type of thing. There are even some cartoons now that are like that. It's just, it's hard to really understand exactly how we have come from a cartoon of showing a man and woman in bed talking to now you've got, and we may get a lot of heat for this, but you know what? We are a podcast. We are going to talk about these things. So I don't have a problem with talking about it. And I'm sorry if it offends anybody that listens in, but you know what? I have a huge problem where you have TV shows geared for kids that have gay couples or that have, not quite like nudity, but they portray certain parts. They emphasize character, parts of their bodies, to the point where it's like, as a young kid, you're seeing that, and then you have questions. And because of those questions, you start to dig your own little research. And we all know it becomes a rabbit hole that you can easily fall into, to where you are seeing things that nobody should ever see.
Especially not a child. Yeah. The thing that's even more frightening than even the homosexual aspect of it is we look at, what was it? It was Sesame Street. Like, I forget the character's name, but there was a controversy because recently they made an episode of no, not Sesame Street. It was Muppets. Like Muppets, the kid Muppet show that's out right now. And one character is gender fluid. It's like, sometimes I'm a boy, sometimes I'm a girl, and I have these magical powers. What did every kid want to be like when they were growing up? The magical characters. Right. So now we're teaching these little boys and these little girls that sometimes you're a boy, sometimes you're a girl, and that's okay. Well, Canadian law, there's currently a case going on where a guy is not able to see his child, and he's in prison because he refused to have a surgery to transition his daughter into a male, or something that is trying to be a male, which in reality is not, right, based on its chromosomes. So a man's in prison because of this. Well, where did his daughter get these things? Her school and TV shows. If you look at the data, we know that there are people who have gender dysphoria. It's a mental condition, and we need to love and support those people and help them through that difficulty. But what we're also seeing is the numbers are shooting up. And it's not because culture is becoming more accepting and all these people are coming out. It's because they are literally being created. Because in states where those things are not allowed to be taught, there's very few cases of that. But in states where it's in elementary schools, it's all over the place. No. Like California and Ohio, there's a massive difference. And that's because one state is clearly making this the case. And if we think that our media doesn't have an impact on that, we're wrong. Right.
No, I completely agree with that, because it all boils down to, when you really look at it, like you said, media, Hollywood. There's so much overabundance, I guess, and we've kind of talked about it, in general with the three of us. But Hollywood essentially desensitizes us to everything. We talk about sex and how, it's like, some people I know can watch one of the hardest movies that I ever watched was 300. Now 300, it's a good movie. I think it's a good movie. It's a good it's a good action movie, great storyline. But there are scenes in that movie that make it so difficult to watch because of my conservative mindset on, sex and things like that. And I remember sitting at work and watching this, and this is actually before I started work at one of my old jobs. But coming into work, spending time with a couple of friends, and they were watching this movie, and it got to the scene where the emperor or the king or whatever his name is and his wife were going at it with each other, and that was the most difficult thing for me to I had to get up and walk out of it. Sure. Because I'm like, I couldn't sit there and watch that. And it's like, then there are people that were just like, oh yeah, I didn't even notice. Like it didn't faze them.
Yeah, that scene was a little unnecessary.
It really was. There's a lot of scenes that are like that are unnecessary. But not just with sex, but like the
desensitization.
Yes, thank you.
Jinx, show me a code.
Violence. Now again, I like horror movies. There's a difference.
Sure there is.
I like horror movies, and I will sit down and I will watch any of them because of the thrill. But then you get to thinking about it, like there are some that are just like so over the top that it just kind of, it seems like Hollywood in that sense has now tried to beat themselves in the fact of like the violence or the gore factor.
Well, here's my take on that. Hollywood is basically trying to up themselves with shock value and like technology. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, this is bloodier and gorier, rather than telling a convincing story. Like the movie Jaws, which I actually haven't seen, but it had you terrified of that shark, and they didn't show hardly anything.
Right.
So they're concentrating less on actually building suspense and good storytelling, and just more on pushing the envelope as far as graphical things can go.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that's, yes, there's the desensitization, but, and this is the case with technology in general, but because we're talking about films, I guess we'll talk about it from the film perspective. We are being sedated. Hey, look at this. Don't go do what you have to do. Don't be responsible for your everyday life. Go look at this thing and give us your money. And it's almost like, when you see The Matrix, and The Matrix is like this thing where, oh, we're all plugged into these robots. It's like, man, with how much media we consume. Like there are literally nights I've caught myself where I'm watching a movie. I'm like, oh, this is a really good movie. And I'm like, this is the second movie I watched tonight. I'm not actually enjoying this. My brain is tricking me into thinking I'm having a good time. And I will literally just shut my laptop, light a candle in my room, and like read a book with like a nice scented candle, because sometimes you just need an hour off. You just need an hour to unplug, or like go for a walk, or go do something, like see the world, and not just always live for entertainment.
I will have to say, and maybe this is the whole Hollywood scene of it, but as you're sitting there telling me that, all I can picture is you in a bubble bath with a little scented candle and a glass of wine. And
nice. Dude, hey man, that sounds awesome. That sounds like a great time.
I like the part that you're picturing another dude in a bubble bath.
Yeah, I know that's kind of weird, but
no.
But anyway,
I don't do bubble baths. I do normal baths.
Normal baths are good. No, but we talk about violence and stuff like that, and I made a list. Okay, and then I want to kind of read these off really quick. I'm not gonna go into a lot of details on it, because there are a lot of things that are just absolutely horrifying that they have been allowed into films. A top 10 list. This is by a website called Screen Rant. Not a sponsor.
I've heard of them though. I've seen some of their videos on YouTube,
and they have some pretty good content, and they made a list of the top 10 most violent films in their perspective. Now I don't have the dates per se
Is Hostel on there?
Hostel 2.
Oh, really?
Is actually.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's just it's crazy thinking about these. But let's say number 10 is a movie called Cannibal Holocaust. It's a 1970s movie. It is exactly what you think. It's basically like, post-apocalyptic era. People have run out of food. They resort to cannibalism. And I've not seen the movie myself, but apparently it goes into some gruesome details as far as, the way people are killed and stuff like that. And there are other movies that are like that just are very cringeworthy for that one.
Mm-hmm.
Number 9, 2008 Rambo. The movie, or the scene in particular, is apparently, and I have not seen this one either, there is a bow and arrow scene where a guy gets shot through the eye, and it basically, you follow the arrow from the bow to the eye.
Ooh.
And it's as cool of a scene as that may sound, according to Screen Rant, it is the number 9 most violent movie.
Yeah,
So that and
sounds
Rambo Last
gruesome.
Blood are really hard movies to watch. They are very gory, and it's so terrible that Hollywood's doing that.
Mhm.
Those movies are freaking awesome. Don't watch them, but they're awesome.
Yeah,
Again,
and I mean,
instead of good storytelling, they're just trying to push the envelope with gore.
Yeah,
Right.
so and that is the problem, because Rambo 1 had a great story.
mhm.
Rambo 1 really did. It's like this guy comes back from war, he's mistreated by those around him until he eventually breaks down.
Right.
Like, what a compelling idea,
Mm-hmm. And then you start getting into, like, by the 8th one, you're just kind of like, okay, yeah, it's just full on.
Rambo 23, nursing home.
Saw is a great way. Now, surprisingly, none of the Saw movies actually made it on the top 10 of this list. But
I never saw them.
Okay.
It's another one of those where, like, the first couple of movies have some really good stories to them, but each movie pushes the envelope further and further.
The Saw movies have a really weird timeline.
They do.
Like, they kind of hop around, which is okay at times, but I don't really like the whole, like, Christopher Nolan hop back and forth pacing. It
Mhm.
rarely can be done well.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a really good director to do it, and really
Right.
good writers.
And with a lot of the Saw movies, they kind of, like, they had different directors. Every other movie they had a different director, so
And different actors.
trying to get them to coincide with each other.
They had like 4 actors play one detective. At least 3. Like,
Yeah. Well, and that's one of those things, like, where you go through the storyline, you have to be able to understand that it is a different actor but it's like different time periods, and it's supposed to be like as the character progresses.
they're all 35, Jonathan.
No.
I'm not convinced.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That's the way it's supposed to be. Anyway, number 8, and I don't remember why this one's on here, but is a movie called Irreversible. I will
Sounds like it would be brutal.
actually, you know what?
This can't be reversed.
Yeah.
Because once you've seen it, you can't reverse the experience, I guess.
There's a joke about that in Ted 2, where he's like, "Oh, what weed are you smoking?" And he's like, "It's something called This Is Permanent."
Jeez. Oh, we're going to get into that one too. But no, number 8, like I said, I don't remember why exactly it's on there. I have notes for a lot of these, but for some reason I did not make a note for that one. Number 7, surprisingly, Passion of the Christ. Now, surprisingly, because that is a Christian movie that I thought was very good. It was a very good portrayal as far as what Christ had to go through, or what he went through before the crucifixion. It is so violent during that. And to me, okay, and this is just kind of like the little plug for myself as a Christian, being able to physically see, okay, this is stuff that Christ had to go through. The cat of 9 tails actually ripping into the flesh, being beaten to where he could not be recognized as a human. That type of thing, it was really kind of like eye-opening in the Christian perspective. At the same time, it was so gory.
So
Yeah.
I'm not defending the gore factor, but that at the very least was gore with a purpose. It served
Right.
the story. I haven't actually seen it, but I've heard about it.
It's a really hard film to watch. The one thing I will say about The Passion of the Christ, it's well done. It is arguably a little too much, but it's very well done. And it serves the story. The one thing I will say, too many young kids saw it when it came out.
Yeah.
And I was one of them.
Mhm.
Like, I was like really little when that came out.
Well, it was because it was one of the first like actual real big budget Christian
Mainstream.
movies.
Yeah.
Mainstream
Yeah.
Christian movies. And so all of these Christian families were like, "Oh, we're gonna go watch this, and you got to see this." And like I said, a lot of people talked about it as this is what Christ went through, so this is what you're gonna, when you read the Bible. Versus, you see a little picture of a couple of trickles of blood coming down the body.
Yeah.
It's completely different. And
Yeah, but there's a difference between going to see that as an adult and exposing your kids to that. Your kids aren't ready for that.
Right. And that is a whole topic on its own that I think, parents need to be able to control what their kids are watching. To the point now, me and my family, we will sit down and like I said, we watch horror movies, we watch, scary movies. My daughter absolutely loved the first Scream movie. We showed it to her, but we had to make sure she was ready before she saw it.
Sure. Yeah.
We weren't just going to put it on and be like, "Oh, you have to sit down and watch this." No, now she's wanting to watch like The Ring, which I know is not like really scary or anything like that.
Such a bad movie.
It is a bad movie, but she likes it. She wants to see it, and the things like that. So number 6, we talked about it. Hostel Part 2. Now I have not seen any of the Hostel movies.
It's really rough.
But I've heard about them, and it's another one of those where it ramps up every single time.
Yeah. Hostel is what Saw thought it was. That's the best way to describe it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
From what I've heard. Number 5, a movie called A Serbian Film. It's a French movie, actually.
Don't watch it. That's all I'm gonna say.
It's bad.
Because I went through this list and watched most of these because I saw this list like 3 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. A Serbian film is very like, from what I gathered, and I mean, you've said you've seen it. From what I gathered, it kind of like takes kind of like that first person look type thing. And it really just escalates it as far as violence goes. Again, it's just absolutely horrible to see. Number 4, Battle Royale. Now, Battle Royale is what I've heard people say, like the Asian version of Hunger Games.
Yeah, it's what the book is clearly like stealing from.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of kids at a school that they get pitted against each other. And it's last man standing. And I mean, they go through, if you can think of a way to kill somebody with a school instrument, they've done it.
Yeah.
It's just, and it's, again, it being like Asian films, they tend to not hold back either.
Asian films could make up that whole list.
Mm.
Like some of these small budget Asian horror movies are brutal, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. Another one, Itchy or Icky, The Killer. It's another Asian movie that just straight up from start to finish, just a gore fest.
Oh, not Itchy and Scratchy from The Simpsons?
No, not Itchy and Scratchy.
That's an enjoyable children's show.
Yes.
It's about peace and love and rainbows.
Okay. Number 2, we'll get through these last ones. Number 2 is Salo, SALO, or 120 Days of Sodom. Yeah. This movie is set back in World War II. It is a French, I believe, a French or Italian movie that essentially rich aristocrats kidnap kids and for 120 days do whatever they want to with them. And it, again, I have not seen it. When I was reading up on it and things like that, there are scenes that they do to these kids.
That one I have not seen, nor have I seen the Itchy the Killer one.
Yeah. Even though I know we put like a content label on this one, I'm not even going to go into what this movie does, just because it's not worth even talking about. Mm-hmm. It's a horrible concept of a movie. Mm-hmm. You got to think of, and this goes back to if people know anything like Bible days type stuff like that, Sodom and Gomorrah, what the city of Sodom was known for, basically put it into a 2-hour or 2.5 hour movie. Mm-hmm. Is essentially what it was.
It's I think it's important to make the distinction here that this is not Hollywood if it's an Asian produced film. So they don't exactly have the same standards or practices mm-hmm. that we do. I don't think anything like that would get made here.
No. Well,
you would be surprised though. There are a lot of things, and like we said, they tend to push mm-hmm. that envelope.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing that's really interesting is we talked about the beginning. So because movies and films in general are art, right? Art can bring out the best in people, mm-hmm. like Michelangelo. It can also bring out the worst in people, Vincent Van Gogh.
Right.
So it brings out these because it's an expression of emotion in the human condition. Well, if there's anything we know about humanity can be awesome. We can come together, accomplish great things, build mm-hmm. civilizations and farming and just crazy stuff. Go to the moon. And then but we also can
be horrible.
We can have the Holocaust. We can have Genghis Khan.
Yeah.
And it's we can do these horrible things.
Right.
And so film is an expression of humanity in that way, which we can see the light in, but also
you see the dark side of it.
It gets rough.
And and as Dave said, some of these movies are foreign films. They're not particularly Hollywood.
Yeah.
But they're films that have been made for quote unquote entertainment.
Yes.
And that's what I have the problem with.
What was the last film on your list?
The number one or the number two?
The number one.
The number one is I Spit on Your Grave.
Sounds brutal.
It sounds like a Monty Python reference almost.
Yeah. It was I believe it was 1979, something around that era, movie that got remade in the early to late 2000s, before mm-hmm. 2010. And it essentially, woman gets attacked and she goes on a rampage to try to find her attackers, and the way that she finds them and exacts revenge on them gets stepped up each and every time. One of the main things, and I'm going to kind of talk about it just for a second. One of the main things about this movie, I guess, that made it the number one most violent film on this list is she finds an attacker, one of the attackers. She breaks a beer bottle, and she proceeds to cut off parts of him with the beer bottle. For the basically for the reference of it, she castrates him mm-hmm. with a broken beer bottle.
Yeah, right.
And then proceeds to stick the beer bottle in other areas.
Sure.
And in the new updated movie, the remake, it's another one of those things where they did not hold back. They show the graphicness of it. They show the aftermath of it and things like that. Mm-hmm. And it's all of that to say, it's again, it's not trying to I'm not trying to give them praise or anything for this list or anything like that. It's just it shows
the depth.
Yeah.
Of how messed up movies can get.
Right. And how messed up people are to go see that. They want to go see it. Because of these types of movies, we get overstimulated, we get desensitized. And, mm-hmm. we kind of made the reference earlier, Noah, that it gets bad to the point where if we see a wreck on the side of the road, we want to stop and go see the body. Because, I've seen it so many times in a movie. I wonder what it looks like in real life.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it kind of it shows exactly how we have become as a society. It's all about violence.
Yeah.
I feel like when we see things like that, we should work on wanting our desire to help people, not just like we view people as ways to entertain ourselves and fill up time, but it's like just actually care about people. It's not easy sometimes, but just to be good to people, not for yourself, but just because they might need it. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at this, trust me, I'm not, but like if we could all as a society work on that, and if people would just care a little more, and not be such selfish jerks, like geez.
That's no fun.
Exactly my point. It's not. That's the like everything has to be fun. It's like no, life isn't fun. Like,
yeah, you know, and unfortunately, it's like we even think about how we think about that. Like I remember a commercial of, and it's just such a weird commercial, and to this day I don't even remember the actual brand or the logo that they were trying to portray, but it was a guy holds a door open for someone, and the person behind them sees that, and it affects them, and so they're sitting in traffic, and instead of inching forward, they let somebody else come out, take, kind of get into traffic with them. And somebody behind them sees that. And so they do something. And then somebody sees that and they do something. And it kind of, like we had said before, it kind of shows the heartwarming part of society, that light that we could actually be able to see in society. But then you see the next commercial and it's all about them. It's all about, that person. I remember, and again, I'm sorry, I kind of like go into these little rants a little bit, but I remember a commercial that did not last long on the radio at all. It was around Thanksgiving a couple years ago. And, the commercial was for, I want to say it's like JCPenney or for Target or something like that. But they switched it from Thanksgiving to Thanksgiving, talking about Black Friday, and so many people had a problem with that.
Yeah.
Because it shows the selfishness of society. It's not what you can give, We're not going to Thanksgiving, we're going to get something, so we're going to Black Friday.
I find that extremely ironic because people are like that, but they don't want to be faced with that reality.
Yeah.
Once they actually put that out on the radio, people are like, "Oh no, this is wrong." But you know what? It's true.
Yeah, and Thanksgiving sometimes, like, I don't know if you guys ever did this, but do the thing where we go around the table. It's like, what are you thankful for this year? And it's like, there's so much. If you ever think about it, a friend of mine, Mella, a close friend of mine, has a niece, and I forget her name, but she disobeyed his brother, one time, or his brother-in-law actually, and she was like, "Oh, I hate this family," or something like that. Kids say stuff because they're frustrated and they just want to hurt you, so they say things that cut deep, And he grabbed his daughter, pulled her near, and he said, "I want you to take a pen and paper and go write down every single thing you're thankful for, and we'll see if what you just said is really the case." And 2 hours go by, and they go back to check on the kid, and there's just like pages and pages of stuff. And it just kind of goes to show that when you actually sit back and like think about what you're thankful for, there's a lot.
Yeah.
We don't do that enough. We don't count our blessings in society.
Not at all.
We don't. And it's sad because, again, it all in a sense reverts back to media, to Hollywood. It's like you can't watch news stories without seeing, somebody, killed somebody because they took a parking spot. I mean, it's crazy that we get to that point. And it's like the media no longer shows the good side of it. I mean, yeah, they'll show, it's like, oh yeah, 15 people went and pulled a cow out of, a swamp because it was drowning. But then there's a baby that's dying on the side of the road that nobody gives two craps about. And as a society, I take great offense to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I say this type of thing, and it's again, it's one of those things like, you know, the whole Roe versus Wade type thing, you know, being overturned. And I've had conversations with people about that. And, you know, on both sides of the fence where it's been, you know, they're pro-life or they're pro-choice and things like that. And some people are talking about how horrible it is because it's taking the rights away from people and, you know, it's not giving us the right to choose, you know, our body type thing. But we're so dedicated to saving animals that have no future.
Mm-hmm.
You know, animals, you know, like, yes, you have a pet. You love that pet. You want to do everything you can for it. But then there's like, oh, the sea turtles are dying because, you know, a straw was used at McDonald's that wasn't paper. And yet we don't think about, it's like this family that's living 2 blocks away that are starving because they can't afford to eat.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, some of them have to go without electricity. I talked to a friend of ours here recently that, you know, that told me that they went 3 years without hot water because they couldn't afford the bill. And it just, it makes me think about like how selfish we are as a society. And again, this is a rant of mine and I'm sorry, but how selfish we are as a society to think that we are better than other people simply because the media tells us we are. And
it's easier than facing the truth. That ties right back into what I was saying. How dare you throw the truth back in our faces and make us realize how selfish we are?
We don't want to think about it.
Yeah, we don't. So it's to use a more modern colloquialism, saving puppies is more Instagrammable than everything else you just talked about.
Yeah.
It's going to get me positive attention. It's not actually about helping. It's not even about helping the puppies. It's just about making people pat me on the back for helping the puppies.
Right.
So with all the discussion about, you know, us actually being real and not being fake, that plugs in exactly with media, because what are we watching? We're watching actors, watching people who are pretending to be something they are not. We are literally watching frauds. You know, and they're actors, they're entertaining, that's fine. But I'm saying, like, if we're watching people pretending to be something they're not all the time, that's going to have an effect on us, and we're going to act as something we're not.
Right.
So, but yeah, I think with film and with culture in general, well, with film more specifically, we need to be expressing ourselves through art in ways that are beneficial, not just things that are flashy or controversial. So I think that film both has a positive effect in how it can be expressed for education, for instruction, and for entertainment, of course. But it obviously has those really brutal and dark elements as well.
Right.
So,
and, you know, it's like, just to kind of touch on one more thing before we just like really move on with this, and, you know, like you're talking about it, like it shows the brutalness of it and things. As a society, you know, especially, Americans, we have a very hard time with portraying our thoughts and everything verbally. And ways that we do that sometimes tends to be by using curse words or swear words or interjections that kind of like fill in those gaps and stuff like that. And I think about it, you know, it's like, where did we get those where do we get those from? A lot of the movies. You know, another useless fact for it is the very first swear word to ever be put into a Hollywood film was Gone with the Wind. You know,
frankly, my dear, fill in the blank.
Yeah. You know, and I mean that.
Frankly, my dear, read between the lines.
You know, but it's like, you think about that. Again, it's one of those where it's like they were able to put that in, and now it's, you know, we were talking about this earlier, the Guinness World Book of Records, the Wolf of Wall Street movie this is just one explicit 507 times in the entire movie. it's, I don't swear, so I'm not going to really say it, but it says the F word. That is a range of 2.8 F words, not including everything else. 2.8 F words per minute. Think about that. That movie's like 2.5 hours long. And it made the Guinness World Book of Records because it wanted to put that many bombs in the movie.
We can top it, guys. No, I'm kidding.
But it's like, I think that, Hollywood has kind of like overstepped its bounds quite a bit with some of those things. And that leads me into the next topic of this, and ways that Hollywood has overstepped. What are some ways that you guys, and I'm going to open this up more for you. I know that I kind of took over that last segment, but it's like I really want to open this up for you guys more. What are some ways that Hollywood, specifically Hollywood, has overstepped its bounds?
I would say with the concept of celebrity, people are allowed to have opinions. People are allowed to have public opinions, but people who are famous don't always understand the sway that they have, or they do, and that's the other issue. Is they have all this sway, and it's like, just because you were Captain America means you get to have all this like sway on education of other people's children, and like it's just ridiculous how much power actors have. I mean, it really is. And directors and other people in the film industry, how much power they have is actually, it's like quite frightening. So yeah, that'd be one.
Mm-hmm. I when you say stuff like that, and it's like I know that there are so many other people that are out there, but the one that always comes to my mind when people talk about how celebrities kind of like use their power for their own agenda is LeBron James. Okay, I will say this to the day that I die, and I don't care. I doubt he'll ever listen to our show. LeBron James is the most overrated player ever. He is not good. The only way that he won the couple of championships that he did is they had to stack his team for him. He is super overrated. He's a horrible actor. If you've ever seen the newest Space Jam movie. But he is one of those that uses his celebrity standpoint to push his agenda. Back when the whole Black Lives Matter thing really fired up, he was one of the front runners, and he was all about, Twitter and Instagram and all of this type of thing on posting what he believed. And I applaud him. I will say I applaud him for being able to, stand up for what you believe in. Mm-hmm. But just because somebody, as you said, Noah, somebody doesn't have the same opinion, doesn't make them any less than you. Mm-hmm. At the end of it, LeBron, you are there to entertain us. Mm. You are there to play a sport. You're not there to teach my children what is right and wrong. Mm-hmm. You're not there to tell me how horrible of a person I am because I'm a different color than you. Mm-hmm. You're there for me to watch you play basketball. Same thing with actors.
Yeah, that's what you get paid to do.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Actors do the same thing. Whoopi Goldberg, sorry, never liked you from the start.
Sister Act 2 sucks.
Sister Act 1 and 2.
Hey,
hey,
it's a movie about Jesus.
Oh,
it is.
Oh,
it's about worship.
Okay.
It's not about worship. It's a comedy, and it sucks.
Yeah. And again, I say these types of things because I highly doubt we'll ever actually make their ears. And if we do, great. It's like at least we've...
Come at me, Oprah.
We've made it.
I've been waiting. Been training for this day.
But Whoopi Goldberg, you have your own TV show with all of these other people. You do not tell me what I'm allowed to have and what I'm not allowed to have. Mm-hmm. You are there to entertain.
Yeah.
You're there to talk about the current events and to talk about things, but you do not have to force your beliefs on anybody else. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, they are your beliefs, not mine. Mm-hmm. And
also, the view sucks. They have like 4 brain cells amongst all of them.
Yes.
None of them can read. None of them do read. I hate those shows where it's like, we're gonna get all these girls in their mid-40s who have done nothing with their lives, and they're going to tell you why society should be run this way or that way. You know what they used to call that? Gossip. It's not a political commentating show. It's literally just women talking to talk. I'm sorry, maybe that's like offensive or sexist, but I don't care because I'm right.
Well, did you guys ever see the male version of that? It was called something else.
The Basement. Just like dudes sitting in a basement drinking beer and complaining.
Honestly, I don't even remember what it was called.
Isn't that what we're doing?
No, we're not drinking.
Yeah, we're not drinking.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was called. All I remember is it had Mario Lopez on it. And it was about a season, maybe 2 seasons, and it was basically the male version of The View.
It had to get canceled because it was too true.
Yeah, they actually had some decent points, but at the same time, you're actors, people. Act, entertain me, that type of thing. What's some other ways? Really quick though, guys. I mean, what's some other ways that they've really kind of overstepped?
I don't know. I think The View is probably the worst example. I really don't like The View. I would. Sorry, Dave. Do you have any thoughts? I'm sorry.
I'm still mulling it over.
Mulling it over. Yeah. Okay. The Steve Wilkos Show.
Oh, I barely remember that.
Like Steve Wilkos and all those shows. Those are really like. They're entertaining, but they cross these weird boundaries. I kind of feel the same way about like Dr. Phil and some other things. I don't like televising people's marital problems or mental health issues. It's not entertaining enough to where it's necessary, and therefore I would rather them deal with these things in private, get the help they need, because it's better for their children to not grow up and see mommy and daddy hitting each other on television.
Very true.
Like you see these shows and it's like they're arguing, they're cussing each other out. One, that doesn't help anything. But then they'll like cut to a photo of the kid and then it'll show them fighting again. And it's like, yeah, that kid's going to grow up and be like, yeah, that was my childhood. That doesn't help anyone. So it's just, yeah, I don't like those shows. I like them because when I grew up watching them, they were entertaining to me. But the concept behind those shows, it's just not worth it.
Well, this helps illustrate the generational gap that you bring it up as Steve Wilkos. Steve was one of the lead guys on the Jerry Springer show.
Yes. Okay. He was like the head security. He was the one that they brought out when they couldn't stop a fight.
Jerry Springer kind of kicked that off. Not Steve. I mean, he was there.
Yeah, well, I just, Steve Wilkos was like, yeah, I am younger. And so when I was like sick from school, I'd be like too tired to pick up the remote, like because my muscles hurt when you're sick. I'm like too tired to pick up the remote. I'm like, all right, Steve Wilkos is on. Let's watch these angry people hit each other in front of their children. It's like, okay.
That right there is something that you're taking these parental issues or even marital issues and things that should be spoken of in private or that should be spoken of, in front of a counselor, not in front of a 1,000-person audience, and it's like you're throwing that out there. And that seems to be, to me, that's another one of those things where I have an issue is, Hollywood just kind of like takes parenting to a whole new low. And what I mean by a new low is, we look at Hollywood's perception of parents, and it seems to be like, the parents are screw ups, and we are. I will say that we are screw ups. I mean, we learn as we go.
That just sounds like being human to me. That's not a parenting specific thing.
Yeah, we shouldn't be considered human. I mean, and it's just like. We make mistakes. We are learning how to be a parent the same way and at the same time that we are trying to teach our children how to mind their parents. It's like once you have a kid, and anybody who has a child, has had a child, anything like that can attest to this. It is an ongoing thing. You're constantly learning every single day. But it's like Hollywood has made the parents, and particularly the dad, to be the total screw up. one of my favorite shows growing up, and I actually went back and watched the first season not that long ago, Home Improvements.
Oh,
Absolutely love that show. Tim
Yep.
Allen is a comical master, but what is he known for?
he's a bumbling idiot.
He is an idiot. He screws up everything. And then here comes his wife, to save the day. And thank God for wives. But it's like, you look at that and you look at it now as an adult male and as a father, and you're like, oh my gosh, we're not that far off. But at the same time, Hollywood just seems to just make that the thing. It's like, well, the male has no idea what he's doing. He's an idiot. He's a buffoon. Here comes the woman. She's a genius. And,
Men did not build society, for the record. That was a joke. Like, the concept of like the foolish dad, like the Homer effect.
Mm-hmm.
And we've all had times where we look at our fathers and we're like, really, dude?
Yeah.
But for the most part, like, there's a lot of good dads out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of why I think that's kind of why Hollywood right now is focusing on the Mandalorians and the Obi-Wan Kenobis because we've had 20 years of stupid Hollywood father figures.
Right.
And even the far left Hollywood is like, hey, can we get some male competency up in here, please?
Right. Yeah.
Once again, everything relates back to Star Wars.
Star Wars is an archetypal story, and therefore everything will relate back to it because stories have always acted that way. And that's why I don't like the everything is Star Wars argument, because no, it's not that everything is Star Wars. Everything is archetypal. All right, I'm not getting into that. If you get me started on Star Wars, we'll be here for 8 years.
Well, I think about it as as a parent, I am trying my hardest. I will ask for help. I ask my parents for help. I'll ask my dad sometimes, like, what do you do in this situation? I'll ask my mom, what do you do? My in-laws, my wife will ask her parents, what do you do in this type of situation? Not once have I ever looked to Hollywood and be like, oh, so that's how I'm supposed to raise my child.
Yeah.
Because when you look at it, you look at like Home Improvements, you even look at going back to Fresh Prince of Bel Air, even the Brady Bunch. Something happens to the child, and the child gets upset, and the child reacts, and the child, does something that's catastrophic, that could be catastrophic. And then what's the first thing that they portray after that? The parents apologizing.
Mm-hmm.
And the parents apologizes, oh, I'm so sorry this happened. I'm so sorry that we let you do this. I'm so sorry that I yelled at you. No, I'm sorry, but I will apologize to my daughter if I made her upset. But essentially, I am the parent that is there to raise my child.
Mm-hmm.
And if I think discipline is necessary, discipline is necessary.
Sure.
If I think that, sitting down and just having a conversation with you to get you to understand things, then if I think that's necessary, then that's necessary. But not once will I ever apologize because, it's like, oh, you decided to run away from home and you crossed the street and nearly got hit by a car. And I'm so sorry that I said something to hurt your feelings to that point. No. When I was growing up, if I decided to run away from home, my parents told me, if you're going to run away from home, you're going to stay away from home. Because the moment you come back through that door, your butt's getting beat. And so I know my parents were not abusive. They were just old-fashioned, and we disciplined very well. But again, you look at society versus like what Hollywood has done to the parental side of it, and how celebrities have portrayed the parental side of things, and it just seems like that's something to me that's overstepped quite a bit.
So I think yes and no, because I think some of the responsibility lies on the viewer to keep in mind this is for entertainment purposes.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a life guide.
Right.
If you are letting if you're letting Tim Allen raise your kids, you're being a lazy and a bad parent. Shut the TV off and have a conversation.
Don't let
with
Tim
your
Allen
kids.
raise your children. The thing there's a scene from Home Improvement I find absolutely hilarious. It's like I think they have it's either one of their grandchildren or like one of their really young children is in the room, and Tim Allen leaves the room and there's a gun in the room, right? And his wife comes in and she's like, how could you leave a gun in the room of the baby? And he's like, I think, what's her name, Leanne or something? No?
You're thinking of Last Man Standing.
Am I?
I don't think it's Home Improvement.
I think it's Tim Allen, though.
It's Tim Allen.
Oh, it's Last Man Standing, not Home Improvement?
Yeah, he had Home Improvements where it was him, Jill, his wife, and then 3 boys.
3 kids, yeah.
Yeah.
In Last Man Standing, it's him, his wife, and I don't remember what her name was, and 3 girls.
Okay.
And one of them has a child. One of them has like a grandson.
So
it's otherwise the same show as Home Improvement.
Well, so it's a
That's
musket.
one of the first things I noticed. What?
The gun is a musket, and he's
Last Man Standing.
he's like, what? The baby's gonna crawl over here, load the powder, put the ball in, pack the powder down, cock the hammer, and then shoot itself. And she's like, well, that's not the whatever.
Yeah.
See, I agree. If that were like a pistol or something, don't leave it in the room with a baby.
Right.
Or even if it is a baby that can't move, like you don't know.
Still, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a musket, so you'll be all right.
Oh my goodness!
It'll take the British Army 3 minutes to do it, but that baby can do it in 10 seconds.
I would definitely take that baby hunting with me.
Right?
If that was the case.
Right?
I could hardly load it the first time. But it leads right back into what we had discussed before as, there are ways that no matter how you really look at it, Hollywood plays a major component in our culture. It teaches us, it does teach us some things. I wouldn't know how to cook half the things that I cook if it wasn't for Gordon Ramsay or some of those the chefs and things like that. I wouldn't know how to fix my car without YouTube.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not really Hollywood, but I will speak to the cooking thing. Like, it's not necessarily that I got recipes, but I got inspired to try something in the kitchen.
Right. And it's a way that it's a way that it has gradually, society and media have, I guess like you said, not really Hollywood, but media in general has really kind of adapted and helped society. And then there's ways that it's just, as we talked about, has seemed like it's been just a total degradation of society. And you got to remember that there needs to be moderation in this. Again, I love movies. I will quote a movie almost every single time that I open my mouth. When I'm at work, I quote movies. When I'm at home, I quote movies, that type of thing. I think society could use Hollywood, but there needs to be that moderation.
Mm-hmm.
And
there needs to be that distinction. This is fantasy. This is not reality.
Right.
Do not take your life advice from this.
Mm-hmm. And and essentially, I mean, that's where we've got to make sure that we take that moderation, because if not, the boundaries are only going to get pushed more and more. We've seen it every single time, even in some of the new like Disney movies and things like that. Boundaries are being pushed. And I know we discussed this before on one of our shows. It's being pushed towards the children because the children are more adaptable. They're more moldable. And, as
easy to manipulate.
Yeah. And so as our generations progress, those boundaries are only going to get pushed more and more.
Yeah.
The children are Anakin Skywalker and Hollywood is Palpatine.
What have I done?
Never.
Do it.
Yeah. So once again, everything goes back to Star Wars.
Everything is Star Wars.
I'm not going to touch that. It's fine.
And guys, I'm glad that we had this discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I know that we kind of got off on little rants here and there, and it's something that needs to be said. I feel, because not everything that we're going to talk about is going to be fun. Not everything we talk about is going to be humorous. I mean, yeah, we have our own little humor involved in it, but this is something that needs to be discussed, because once again, Hollywood or the media is not going to discuss this.
He says on a form of media that we're trying to attract attention to.
But
Yes.
not the media.
Yeah, not the media.
We're not the media. We're a media.
Yes. Shout out to our 3 listeners. This is why we have 3 listeners, because we do this.
Now, what was their name? Benji, Bob, and Goku?
I thought one of them was like Felicia or something.
Felicia, Bob, and Goku. Something about Goku.
Bye, Felicia.
Yeah.
Bye, Felicia.
All right, guys. Thank you once again for listening to us. It's been a joy. Again, if you hear this and you enjoy it, even if you don't, leave us a comment. Check us out on Facebook. There's not a whole lot there right now. It is a work in progress.
As is Instagram. I don't think there's a single photo on it. Oh, you know what? Let me take a photo.
Yes, we need to do our recording photo for Instagram. Smile, everybody. Say cheese.
Selfie.
As Dave tries to figure out how to work his. There you go. So, it's...
Yay, 2 photos for Instagram. Yeah. At Carry Out Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Well, no, not YouTube. We don't have a custom URL yet. What's the other one? Twitter. And carryoutpodcast.com.
Yes. Give us a listen. We are on Apple, Spotify.
Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and
Saudi
YouTube.
Arabia Audio.
No.
We're not on there?
Not yet.
We're never going to take off if we're not on Saudi Arabia Audio.
Some of the conversations that we have could be used as torture devices if we really wanted them to. I mean,
yeah.
Anyway.
That's the point of the podcast.
There are multiple ways to listen to us, guys. Give us a listen if you like it. Share it. Again, I know that there are a couple of people that do listen in that I know personally. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure again to do this. As we wrap it up tonight, my name's John.
I'm Dave.
And I'm Noah.
And this was Carry Out Conversations. Thank you.